Welcome to the Stream of Art podcast. Join me, Robyn.
And me, Michelle, as we chat openly about personal growth, creativity, and building a career in the arts. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 25th episode of the Stream of Art podcast. Today, we're going to be doing a little midway checkpoint for the year 2024. But first, we will do our little check-in, our little revised check-in, updated check-in. So, Robyn, do you feel like sharing a win, a challenge, and then an interesting or fun thing from the last few weeks?
Yeah, I will oblige you.
I appreciate that.
Oh, yes, well, you're welcome. I follow instructions. When I did my art show last weekend, and that was the first one of 2024. So that was a win. It went well. Yeah, it went well. I sold 5 pieces, which was really nice.
Wow, awesome.
And, yeah, and I think it was much needed. Just like the last couple of shows I've done have been, I haven't made back my vendor fee, so right. It was nice to make back basically the vendor fee for the last 3 shows, which is great.
Oh wow, awesome.
Yeah, so that was really good, and we got kind of rained out on the second day. It was crazy because it was outdoors, and the rain was like, we were set up in these, they were horse stalls, but they were all cleaned out and stuff, and there wasn't a horse. They were empty. There was no horses in there.
That would have been kind of fun, though.
That would have been really fun.
You each had a horse with you.
Yeah. That would have definitely been a draw for people, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rain, it was like torrential downpour, and it was the winds picked up too, so it was blowing like sideways right into my stall. Oh. So I had to like very quickly take everything off the wall, throw a tarp over it. But the whole area was just like flooded. It was...
Yeah.
Anyways, it was memorable for sure. But despite that, it was a successful weekend, so I'm happy for that. That was my win.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. And then in terms of challenge, I mean, the past like month, the challenge has just been eating well, because it's been a very busy month for various reasons.
Right.
And so my diet has gone it's complete garbage at the moment. So that's been a challenge, but like a fun challenge in a way, because it means I've been eating garbage, which is always, I know it's not good for me, but
it's really satisfying when things are very busy and you can like let that slide in a way that you feel justified to do so. And you're like, yeah, I'm really going to enjoy this thing I normally don't feel good about having.
Exactly. Yeah. And then in terms of just like a fun, interesting thing, I was struggling to think of something, but then I was like, well, the other day there was a firefly in the house, and that was cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love fireflies.
I know. I was sitting on the couch and I saw this, like, it was dark because it was like 9:00 and I was watching TV and all the lights were off. And I saw this like shiny thing out of the corner of my eye. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And I looked over and it was a firefly buzzing around, and I tried to catch it, but then I lost it somehow. Anyways.
Fun. Yeah,
Your turn.
Those. Yeah, so my win, this is like very guitar specific, but I have this, it's kind of like a solo series that I've been working my way through. So I've talked about Tom Quayle before. He's been one of my biggest guitar influences over the last few years. And he has a JTC course. So JTC is Jam Track Central. And they do all sorts of like jam tracks and courses and stuff like that. And I love their courses. And I have a couple of Toms, and I have one of his called Fusion Essentials Volume 1. And I've been slowly chipping away at it over the last few years. So like I've learned all the solos from it. There's like maybe 5 or 6 solos. And I just recently, just last weekend, went to revisit one of the solos that I haven't looked at in like over a year. So the way that I learn these is that I transcribe them. So I use sort of a combination of like the video to get a sense of like where he's playing. And then I'm just using my ear to just pick out what's happening. So I don't have any of this like written down. I mean, there is tab that's included, but I personally don't prefer to just learn by ear. So what happens is if I haven't worked on one of the solos in a while, is I forget it. I wouldn't be able to sit down and just like play it. I need to kind of almost relearn it, but it's not really relearning it because it's in my brain. It's in my muscle memory already. And my win was that I pulled it back into my practice, and it took me like 2 sessions to like remember the whole thing. Oh,
nice.
Like, and it was just really encouraging to be like, it's still there. It's been well over a year. I can't remember because I keep track of like when I last practiced each solo, and it was like 2023. It's been like well over a year since I last even looked at it, and that it took me 2 sessions to just get it together. And now I can play it again. So now it's just about like continuing to practice it to kind of like close the gap, get that last like 10% of the speed I need to get to be able to play it all the way through at full tempo. But yeah, that felt really nice. My challenge, again, I'm just kind of struggling with sleep a little bit. This is like an ongoing theme for me, is just especially the waking up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and then not being able to get back to sleep. That really gets me. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to do about it. I have a couple of strategies that I'm going to try to see if I can improve it. But I'm also, it's a question of, am I just overthinking it? Am I just making this a bigger problem than it really is? But because I'm so dependent on sleep, as everybody is, but I'm really like fully accepting how much I need sleep to function well, because I know it's so important for me. I think that's part of the reason why it's just something I find it's so infuriating that I am not in control of it as much as I'd like to be. Like, I do all of the right things. I like go to bed at a good time, and I'm, doing everything I should be doing. And then it's like I'm waking up and then I'm exhausted the next day. So I don't really know what to do about that at this point, but I'm going to try a couple of things and see if I can get it together.
Yeah, I mean, insomnia is annoying that way, right? Because you can't fight it, and then it's very easy. You get overstressed about it. Like, we've all had that experience of waking up and like it's like 3 a.m. and it's okay, well, if I fall back asleep in 20 minutes, I'll still get another 4 hours of sleep. And then it's like the clock keeps ticking, and then it's like, okay, well, if I fall asleep now, I'll get 2 hours, and then it's like, I need to fall asleep because I'm only gonna get a half an hour of sleep. Like, it's just, we can work ourselves into a state which actually just makes it a million times worse.
Yeah, I had a couple of nights like that this week, and it's funny because the daily Stoic meditation for one of those days, for maybe like the day after the second night I really struggled to sleep, was talking about, it was something that, it was like the idea of trying the opposite. And I think the example that he used was something Viktor Frankl would do with people who struggle to sleep. He's like, instead of like trying to sleep, try not to sleep. Try your hardest not to sleep, and see if just that takes the pressure off. And I'm like, that's something I have to remember to try, because I remember reading that last year and going, oh, that's a great idea. But by the time I had my next bout of insomnia, like, I had forgotten that it was a thing. So I need to keep that sort of at top of mind. The other example he included was that one episode of Seinfeld where George is like doing the opposite. It's like he does the opposite of what his intuition would normally tell him to do. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just like, oh yeah, I gotta try to remember that. So I think I will try something like that, because I know I so easily put pressure on myself to like do the thing I know I should be doing, and like sleep is something like I also want to be doing. Like, I like sleeping, and it's very frustrating when I'm just lying there and tossing and turning. And so yeah. Anyways, so the interesting fun thing for me was I read the 3rd book in a series I've been reading from Lindsay Ellis. It's called the Numina or Numina series. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I'll put a link, of course, in the show notes. But the 3rd book was released at the beginning of June. I had pre-ordered it and I kind of forgot. And then I got it and I'm like, oh yeah. And so I read it and it was really good. It was definitely like by far my favorite in the series so far. And it really just kind of rekindled my obsession with reading, because I've been reading quite voraciously since I finished that book. It took me like just over a week to finish it. And ever since, it's kind of like reignited that in me. So that's felt really nice, because I had a stretch of, probably about 5 or 6 months where I was reading a little bit every day, but it just wasn't to the same degree I had been for a while, where I was really feeling like I was doing so much reading and really pulled to do a lot of reading. So it's been really fun just to get back into like reading a lot again as well. So that's been really fun. All right, do you want to kick it off with a little check-in for how your year's going so far and what you're thinking about for the next half of the year?
Yeah. So it's crazy to think that it's been 6 months.
Yeah.
Since January. I mean, that's like, and it's been, I mean, the last 6 months have been a blur, definitely. And there's been a lot of curveballs too, like with work, with mental health stuff, with, so it's interesting. I don't feel like I've really made any progress in any direction so much since January. There was things that I had said, like, so I never completed the 100-day project. I forgot to give that update. I got to day like 75, but I didn't.
That's really good.
Yeah, it is pretty decent. And then, I haven't been painting at all. I haven't painted since April. And like in terms of consistency, the only consistent thing has basically been this podcast and showing up for work. So that's just, I don't know. It's just like, that's me, I guess. Like that's just life. And that's how things go with me. And I'm kind of like, I think this whole idea of grinding and pushing yourself and constant productivity and all of that, I think I'm just, at the moment, I find all of that just exhausting. And I don't know, whenever I'm in this kind of mode, I'm always like, is this just self-sabotage kicking in, but I'm also just, I'm in this kind of phase where I'm just looking at life and like, what do I actually want out of my life? Like I feel like I take things so seriously and it doesn't actually do anything to move me forward, because I take things so seriously that I exhaust myself and then I switch into this just complete doing nothing mode. I think we've talked about this before too. Like this, I'm like my own worst enemy. But like when I was re-listening to our January podcast where we were kind of laying out our annual planning stuff, some of the things I had promised myself was to be like more gentle and just acknowledging that I probably won't hit all the milestones I set out to hit, and making an effort to celebrate the small successes versus punishing myself for not doing everything that I wanted to do. And that still resonates.
Yeah.
So I don't know what, I kind of just rambled and I don't know what my point was, other than things kind of feel all over the place still, but I trust that, I don't know. I don't know. I'm in a weird place.
Yeah. I relate to that for sure. Yeah. I think definitely like one of the things I noticed when I was listening back to that episode is that, you were talking about how you hadn't painted at that point in quite a while. And now like to have
I'm back to that.
But not really. I mean, you're in a different place because of all that painting you did in between. Like you were painting like crazy for a while there. Yeah. Like you had a bunch of commissions and then to make it 75 days out of 100, that's a lot. Like 75 days is no joke. I think like a 100-day challenge is crazy. Like usually like challenges are only like 30 days because anything more than that can feel, so daunting. But you made it 75, like that's crazy. So definitely I think, being gentle on yourself, but also like you said, like to celebrate your wins. And that wasn't even a small win. I think that's a really big win. And so yeah, maybe you're at another period of creative rest, but you haven't gone back. This is just the next period of rest, but you have all of this work you did behind you. So you are at a different place than you were before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like in some regards, I've gained some clarity in some areas, like I've kind of figured out a way forward that allows me to continue pursuing sort of my more traditional landscapes as well as my abstract work without feeling like I have to sacrifice one for the other. Like I've kind of figured out a way of doing that in a way that makes sense to me and to anyone who might be visiting my website. Because that's the other thing I'm always aware of, is that it's good to kind of have some sort of artistic voice, right? And some consistency there. So I've kind of found a way to find that kind of consistency while also allowing myself to explore two very different avenues. So that's good. And I think I have I just want to stop caring so much, because it's taken the fun out of a lot of stuff. And again, like as I was saying, like it hasn't been serving me to care that much anyways, because I still burn out and stop doing art or trying. So the next logical thing for me to try is to just not try so hard. Not care, not try so, no, that's the wrong thing. The next logical thing for me to do is to not care so much and to take things less seriously. And I think I'm also just kind of like, I'm out of shape and I feel lethargic. And so I think like taking care of my physical health, taking care of my mental health, and kind of realizing I'm at the point where I'm realizing that you can't actually do anything or get to where you want in life if you don't have those two things. Like if you don't have good mental health, or I shouldn't say that, if you're not taking care of your mental wellness and you're not taking care of your physical wellness, then you don't have a very strong foundation. And those two things take a lot of time and a lot of work. And so it could very well be that all I can do right now is work. Like, like the work that actually makes me an income that I can live off of, and taking care of physical and mental wellness. Like that might be all I have the capacity to do. And that's fair enough. And I wonder if that's why so many people, like, I feel like the burnout rates are so high. And I wonder if it's just like people are trying to do too much without realizing that, like, taking care of the core fundamentals, that takes time. And sometimes it takes kind of all your time. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think taking care of yourself mentally and physically and emotionally, I think that's so important. Yeah, and it feels to me like you're at this place, but I think it's about definitely that acceptance, that recognizing that you can't do every single thing all the time, and that it's okay to put something aside in order to take care of the things that really matter right now. Something that we talk about a lot is how art will always be there for you once you're ready for it again. I say this about music too. Like I'll have a student who needs to stop doing lessons because they have stuff going on in their life. And I'm always saying to them, because they often feel like really bad, like, oh, I feel like I'm not gonna be able to get back into it. I'm gonna lose all this progress. I'm like, look, it's always gonna be there for you when you're ready for it again. Just the thing that matters is that you don't put it down forever. You just come back to it. And so for you, like, I think you'd almost said something about trust, like, or a little bit earlier. I think if you have that trust that you'll get back to it, you'll find your way. Like there's just more important things right now, and then you'll find your way back, and with more of that, maybe more of like a light touch to it. So like not taking it so seriously. That will probably make for a more fulfilling experience for you. I mean, because that's really what I'm getting at with all of the building musical life stuff that I talk about, because I had a really unhealthy and unhappy relationship with music for a lot of years. And it took me a long time to finally find a way to build a life in music that made me happy. So now my interactions with music are always really satisfying, and they support me and they lift me up. So you might just be going through that kind of period now where it would be worth taking the time to reflect on what it is you want to experience with art. Like it over the course of, yes, years in terms of what you want to achieve, but even just like what your day-to-day experience with art looks like. And that, to embrace the periods of rest that you often are needing from creating and all of that.
It's a tricky thing because the challenge is that I've mixed kind of the selling in with it. And that's where the challenge is. It's not so much the art making. Like I think I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that I work cyclically and I have my off periods and then I have my on periods, but it's the the stress that comes with all the shoulds that I feel around the selling component.
Right.
Like all the shoulds that I need to be doing in order to be selling more work more consistently. And that's where the challenge comes in, and that's where the that's the element that I find draining. And it doesn't help that you get kind of caught up in the comparison game as well when you see what other people are doing, and you're like, oh, that's a really good idea, like I should do that. That comes into my head a lot with various things. I think that's the part when I say like taking it less seriously. I think that's the part that I mean is just like like just I had all these grand plans of how to make this into a business, and there was, you know, not too long ago, like that was my declaration, was like, I am committed to making this a business, like a sustaining business. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm committed to doing that. And that shifted now again, because I'm like, I just don't know. I don't know if I want to take it that seriously. Like, just like, what do I enjoy doing? I like doing the art shows. Okay, well then do those. Like, do those, like try to do like 6 a year or something, like, and maybe a newsletter, and leave it at that. Like, forget the rest. Forget social media marketing. Forget, like, you know, it's just because all of that stuff is so, I find it all so tiring, and so I just don't want to participate in that. Like, I don't want to be part of that system. System is the wrong word, but yeah.
I know what you mean. It's interesting. One of the podcasts I listen to is hosted by 2 artists, and they were talking about, I think they're going to be doing a panel at a Comic-Con or something, and it's talking about specifically about building your audience away from social media, like away from these social media platforms, like how to do it differently, because definitely, I mean, it's problematic for all the reasons we've just discussed previously. Yeah, so I know it's definitely possible to do that. So yeah, I think getting clear about not wanting to waste your time and energy delving into that side of it, that's gonna just help you have the experience you want with it.
It's funny too, because as you say that, I'm like, we've had this conversation. I've shared these thoughts a million times since we started this podcast. It's funny how, like, I'm a broken record, but I forget. It's funny how we get caught on certain things, and we just can't push ourselves out of that frame of mind. So it's like I'm caught in this weird cycle right now that I haven't gotten out of yet, and I'm circling around the same issues.
Yeah. But it's like you are ending up in a bit of a different place each time. It's kind of like what I was saying before about, you know, you're not back to where you were before, where you're not painting. You're not painting, but it's like after all this time where you have painted. So like each time you go around the cycle, you are moving forward. It's just not like this. It's just kind of like this. So
well, no wonder I'm so tired.
Yeah,
it's sort of going linear. Yeah.
So each time, and like the fact that you said, like, I got some more clarity about this, like, that's so important. And that's the kind of thing that only comes from having some kind of experience. So, you know, to try doing the social media thing and just be reminded again with more intensity that, oh, this something is just like to my core does not feel like something I want to do. Like that's important. And sometimes we need to learn something several times before it sticks. Like, it's crazy to me as I take the time to like reread my journal entries and how it's like the same things I've been writing for like the 2.5 years I've been doing journaling. It's like some things get better. And that's really encouraging, is like when you can see some things get better, but often it's like the same song and dance. It's just like, when am I going to learn a new number?
Yeah. And I do stress that I'm just self-sabotaging out of fear is the other thing too, right? Yeah. Like, so I have all this stuff that's going through my head, and it's like, I just want to be able to exist without, like, I am too much in my head generally, I think. And it's like, I just want to exist and feel calm. And because I mean, like, there's so much to feel calm about in my life too, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's lots to feel anxious and stressed about. It's very easy to find those things, but there's also lots that can make me feel at peace and calm. And it's like, it almost feels like I have this fear that in 5 years things are going to be or not 5 years, but I have this fear that at some point life's going to get very hard and very challenging. And I'm going to look back on this and think, why didn't I just, that was such a calm period. Why didn't I just embrace that and feel good about it in the moment? Like this, like, which adds another layer of anxiety.
Yeah, I totally relate. It feels like you're constantly just living in this paradox of like, my life is stressful, but also my life is pretty easy in some way.
Yes,
so it's like,
exactly.
I get that all the time where I'm like, there are like exactly like what you said. Like I can look around and there are a lot of things for me to be really unhappy about, but there are also a lot of things for me to be really happy about. And so I'm actually doing a lot of work on that these days, where I'm trying to just reframe how I look at my life right now, in a way that's still moving me where I want to go, because this is not where I want to be, but that really like fully appreciates all the good stuff that I do have. So, and there's this idea from Epictetus. He talks about how everything has two handles: the handle you can carry it by and the handle that you can't. And so to be able to look at my life like that, like what's the handle that lets me carry my life forward? And that's like taking time to appreciate all the autonomy I have, all the time I have, all the space I have to, do all of this work that I'm doing, to have my cat who keeps me company, and to, be in a place where I am taken care of and I'm relatively comfortable, and, like to have the support that I do have, rather than always looking at the lack. And like, I don't have this that I want, and I'm not this person yet, and my life is not the way I thought it would be. Like, it's been helpful to just come at it from that place of focusing more on what's going right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think ultimately for me, I'm craving simplicity. I think that's the best way of phrasing it. And so I think for the next 6 months, I think that's kind of, and like simplicity is like simplifying the things that I'm doing and focusing on. Mm-hmm. And so work is not simple. Like I think anyone's work is not simple. There's lots of moving parts. There's lots of people you're working with. There's a lot, it's not a simple thing.
Yeah.
But outside of that, keep it really simple. Like, what are your priorities? Okay, getting back into shape. Okay, well then exercising is like, just focus on exercising and eating well and leave it at that. And then anything extra is just extra. And like, give your brain a break from all that other stuff, all the other ideas that I have and goals and all of that. Just like, just leave it. Just stop.
Yeah, I think we're also conditioned to keep moving forward, whatever the cost. But it's so helpful to stop and just take stock of where you are, and to make those choices to go, what am I carrying with me that's not either just not helpful or just isn't helpful right now? And what is it that I need to bring with me as I do move forward? And sometimes moving forward does happen when you're just in that place reflecting.
Yeah, well, I don't even want to reflect, because it's like I do so much reflection and thinking. I don't even want to do that. Like, I don't want to do any of that. The only thing I want to think about is exercising and eating well. And then my time will be filled with whatever I feel like filling my time with in the moment. But it's like, I don't even want to, I don't want to have to think about taking stock of things or analyzing or any, because even that idea is just exhausting.
Yeah, fair.
So that's where I'm at. And we'll see. That may change in a month, and it probably will. But it means that in terms of thinking for the next 6 months, I have no idea what's going to happen. I have had this really strong feeling that things are moving in the right direction. Like, or not even that, not that things are moving in the right direction, but that like the experiences I'm having are going to shift me in a way that puts me in a much better place. Mm-hmm. And that's been really interesting, because I started to have that feeling probably around February or March, where I felt like things are going to be really rough and rocky for a little bit, but it's all going to lead to somewhere good. And I still have that feeling overall. So it's been that's been helpful, because it means I don't think I've been beating myself up to the same extent that I have in the past. Mm-hmm. because I'm kind of just curious. I'm like, oh, something is good is gonna come out of this, but what is it gonna be? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see where I land in another 6 months, I guess.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a great place to be in, is recognizing that there will be good at the end of the difficult. Because there's this concept I learned about the end of history illusion that I read about in the book Push Off From Here by Laura McKowen. And it's this idea that, we feel like, maybe things have changed for us in the past, or we've changed in the past, but like the future, we're just going to be more of like who we are right now. Like this, like we are right now and how we feel right now, like this is how it's going to be always. So to be able to recognize that, no, things are going to change, and the sort of general trajectory is aimed in the right place. It's just there's a lot of unknowns, which is really just life. It's a lot of learning how to navigate life is learning how to be, if not comfortable, at least to fully accept the fact that so much is unknown.
Yeah. So essentially I've rejected all of my past plans for myself, and I'm rejecting the idea of planning for the next 6 months. So on that note, tell me about how the past 6 months have gone for you and what your plans are for the next 6 months.
Well, I, for one, will never abandon planning.
Yeah.
Because I need it. I need it to feel like there is some semblance of control in my life.
Well, and so this is where it's different.
Clinging desperately.
Yeah. It's different between you and me, right?
Yeah.
It's like, for me, I'm not relying on my art or any of that stuff as my source of income. So like I have that kind of stability in just my general, my actual day job. So you're coming at this from a different place, and it's like, you're running this, like this is your livelihood. So yeah, you don't have the privilege of rejecting planning.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I do enjoy planning, so
yeah. Well, and I do too.
A little bit too much.
I love planning. I just don't like actually like executing the plans.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I listened to our episode. I've made a lot of notes. I honestly don't know if I'll have time to go through it all. I'll try to get through as much as I can because I have a lot of thoughts. So yeah, one thing I wanted to make note of is that my music streak continues. So I did mention in that episode that at that point I was about 4.5 years into a working on music every day streak, and now I'm at almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years at the end of August.
Ooh, that's exciting. We'll have a party?
Yeah.
Will there be cake?
There can be.
I don't like that there is a long silence there.
I was trying to think of a good response to that. My brain is running too slow this morning. I was like, say something funny. I'm like, sure, we can have cake. Like, hilarious.
But the hesitation gave us something to talk about. So,
yeah. In all seriousness, I do not want a cake for this. The music is satisfaction enough for me. But if you would like a cake and you need that as justification, you have my permission.
Can I just celebrate your successes? Because I feel like I feel like they might be a little more consistent than mine.
As you said that, it made me think of that one Simpsons episode where it's one of the future ones where Lisa gets married, and then Bart's talking about how they had a bachelor party for Hugh or something. And then they're like, what? And he's like, well, I had a bachelor party. And it's like, I went to a strip club or something like that. So this image of you just sitting and eating cake, just being like, I'm just celebrating Michelle's success.
Yeah.
And that was our party. Like, what?
But like, I'm on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, is she coming? It's like, no.
I don't need her to celebrate. I can celebrate her successes on my own.
And celebrate enough for two.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of planning, so planning in quarters has been helpful. I will acknowledge that I didn't do much to reflect on the first quarter and then plan for the second quarter. I had a kind of a weird start to the year. So I'm sure I've talked about this before, but I had a really off period for like several months. Sort of like I started feeling it kind of around December, end of December, but definitely through like January into February, March. You know, I felt like I would bounce back from RPM faster than I did. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that maybe I'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, so I kind of fell out of that place of even thinking, not even like, oh, I didn't want to reflect. I didn't even think of it. It was like April came and went, and it was like, oh, I'm like in the second quarter, you know, and I was just kind of like chipping away on the stuff I had been working on. So in that sense, I didn't really make use of my plan like the way I like to. But as I was looking at the plan that I had made for the year, I'm like, I'm really glad I set it up the way I did, because it was helpful to take some things off my plate I probably would have felt pressure to put on. So
right.
That has been really helpful, just to be better about acknowledging my limited time. But I still think I can probably improve on that front, because I still, as I'm looking at some of the other things I had planned for the year, I'm realizing I think that was still more than I can really handle. And part of that is because I had a couple of opportunities crop up to do some training. One, I did some training for like financial stuff, and I did some business training as well, that I got a lot of like really great information and really great ideas out of, but it was very time consuming. You know, each one took me a good chunks of time out of like, you know, 2 weeks each. So, you know, it was like, I think I need to be better about leaving more space for things that could happen, rather than, again, feeling like I need to fill up all my time. Like, you know, fill it up, but leave a little room for stuff like that to happen. Because that was definitely not something I had planned, but I was very glad to be able to make the time to take advantage of those opportunities, because I've learned a lot, and I feel like it's helping me do a lot of shifting. And yeah, and so now that I'm feeling better, so now this is like the end of the second quarter. Tomorrow is going to be the start of the third. I'm really glad that I have the structure to fall back on, because it helps me to feel like I haven't like wasted the year. You know, it wasn't the start of the year that I was expecting, but I feel like at previous points in my life, I would have felt like, oh, well, like this year is basically a write-off because I couldn't do it perfectly. So to be able to think about, I mean, part of that's just my mentality around that has changed. Like I don't quite have the same struggles with an all or nothing mentality. It's still there, but I'm much better about knowing that nothing is a write-off. Even a day isn't a write-off. I can always do something to make it worthwhile. But even just being able to think in these chunks helps me to feel like I can really do something with my time. So
it's also helpful, like for the all or nothing, like if your time scale is a year and it's like things go off course and it's like, oh, well, then it's not like this year's been a waste. Let's just like tap out. You, even if you make that, like by working in quarters, you're shortening that time scale too. So even if you fall into the all or nothing thinking still, into that trap, if you were to dismiss, you would just be dismissing 4 months versus dismissing 12. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
definitely.
If things were to go sideways and you're like, oh, this quarter has been a write-off, it's just been 4 months versus like 2024.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been hearing this advice kind of cropping up recently, you know, independent of Cal Newport, this idea of like working in these 3-month chunks and how much better that is for a lot of people, rather than trying to plan for a whole year, you know, just every few months you're just like committing to these, you know, these changes or these projects or whatever. I think it's just I think it adds to that flexibility, which is something I need more of. I need the structure, but I need that flexibility too, that rugged flexibility to take that Brad Stulberg idea.
I'm just thinking too, like I'm thinking even, because one of the things I struggle with is like I'll get excited about a new project or something, but then I lose enthusiasm for it fairly quickly. And I'm like, so maybe even like shortening it even further, some people might want to consider doing like 1 month.
Absolutely.
1 month things, you know. It depends on how you can kind of keep yourself engaged and how your attention span works. And mine is very my attention is easily lost.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, I think again my philosophy is so much about being intentional, like working intentionally with how you work. And that's something that I'm getting better and better and better at. So, one of the things I do know I need to do is be better about my weekly planning. I think I often go into a week kind of just treating them more or less the same. Like I know I have certain things that crop up in a week that are different. So I'll have like different appointments. I have different meetings sometimes, but for the most part, I kind of like go into each week not having done enough reflection on what I had in my quarterly plan. So that's one thing Cal Newport talks about, is that when you make your weekly plan, what you're doing is you're referring to the stuff that's in your quarterly plan. You're looking at it. You're looking at how your week is structured, everything you have scheduled. And then you're saying, okay, I'm going to take this thing and move this forward. So I think I need to be better about that. I think that's where I'm maybe getting a little bit stuck with some things, is that I'm doing too much still, where I'm trying to move everything forward a little bit each week, rather than maybe taking a week where I'm going to really prioritize this thing so I can like really push forward with it, and maybe then dial back on some of the other things. Like a good example is like I'm working on my album right now, and maybe I can have a week where that is really my priority. Like I'm going to work on that, and then the practicing is going to be like dialed down just because I for my own health and happiness, I need to have like some kind of practicing. Otherwise I can't let it go completely. But how can I dial it down so that it's just taking up minimal space? I'm doing something that's still kind of at least maintaining where I'm at, so then I have more space to just work on this thing for this week, or to like so this week I'm just going to work on business stuff. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of music stuff in the morning, so I'm happy with my music stuff. And then I'm going to give myself this 4-hour chunk, and I'm just going to work on this particular business thing, or this particular teaching thing, or this whatever. So I think I need to be better about not trying to make every week look the same, or have every day look the exact same. Which again is something I'm sort of gradually getting better at over time. But I think if I fully embrace the weekly planning, I think that'll help me to be better about that. But like my basic daily structure is roughly the same. The biggest thing that's changed is again getting up at 6 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. That's been a big thing for me, is, you know, finally acknowledging that the 5 a.m. wake up time is probably not the best for me, just because I really struggle to get to sleep if I am in bed at 9 o'clock. It doesn't seem to happen. And I'm still wondering if there isn't maybe a better approach for me to take at some point. I often wonder if it wouldn't be better for me to do like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. But the thing I like about getting up at 6 is that I have reading time, especially now that I'm not doing the artist way anymore, and I don't have to write the 3 morning pages. Technically, I was still supposed to do that for like 90 days after, but I just got to the end of the notebook that I bought for that. So I was like, that's a sign. I need to be done. Yeah. So I still do the morning journaling. It's just like a page or a page and a half. It's just like what I need, rather than feeling like I have to do 3 pages. So that's been a lot better too. It's just not having 3 pages of writing I have to do every morning. It was getting long. So yeah, so I love my reading time in the morning. And that too has been part of why I'm getting more reading in. So I don't really want to give that up. But it's something I'm toying with. I'm not completely committed to staying with this time forever if I feel like my sleep would be better aided by doing a different time, but we'll see. The time block planning I'm still doing. There were definitely some times when I really struggled to follow it though. I felt like I maybe gave I was either like just maybe again self-sabotage. Maybe I was just giving myself more leeway than I should have, or perhaps I could look at it that I was trying to set myself up into a schedule that I didn't have the capacity for, like on a certain day. So like a good example is on a Friday. You know, Fridays are kind of hit or miss for me, because sometimes I could be really tired, but sometimes I could be super duper productive. So I often will go into a Friday being like super optimistic, like I'm just going to do a time block plan, and it's going to be like kind of a busy day. Like I'm going to get this and this and this done. And then I end up sleeping in because I'm just exhausted. So I don't know. The time block planning is still very helpful for me, but I do feel like either I have to just like be way more disciplined with following it, or I need to be giving myself more time where I'm not following it, because it is like, it's very intense. this is something Cal talks about, is like part of why it's so effective is because it creates this urgency when you have these blocks of time and you have to like follow them as closely as you can. Obviously, again, he's like, it's not, you don't get a gold star. And, you know, if something's going well, like he talks about if he has a writing block and then something after, if the thing he has scheduled after isn't super important and his writing's going well, he's like, I'll just like blow through the next block and just like, you just change it when you get a chance. So it is designed to be flexible, but if I keep not following it, my brain's going to learn that this thing isn't really effective. It's going to be like, oh, this is something I can like take or leave, rather than this is like how I've deliberately decided to structure my day. So I definitely feel like I need to sort of up the ante there, but I think a lot of that's going to get better just as I'm feeling better too. So I'm feeling more like myself these days, and I think that'll make it easier. So one of the things I mentioned in that episode, the 2024 planning episode, was this idea of leaving behind stuff that wasn't serving me, which I ended up doing a lot more of that, but a lot of it was internal stuff. I wasn't expecting to go through this period of several months where I did a lot of introspective work. I did a lot of emotional work and mental work. I really did a lot of stuff to work on my mental health. And a lot of that I can attribute to doing the artist way. That really had me going deep. So I think too, something I realized as I was just reflecting on the last 6 months is that I think part of why I haven't made the progress I wanted to in so many of my so many areas, like in especially like the career areas, is that the kind of capacity I needed to do that internal work was much more than I had anticipated. But I'm glad I gave myself that space, because it's like something that Laura McKowen talks about in her work. She had substance abuse disorder, and when she stopped drinking alcohol, you know, she was talking about how she thought she could like kind of do sobriety quietly. Like it was just something like she could live her life, and it was just this thing that she was kind of like doing on the side. But she talks about how you really have to go all in to do it. And I think I really had to go all in on this work, on this internal work. So it meant I had a lot of days where I didn't do a lot besides, you know, journaling. I slept more than I usually do. I gave myself a lot more mornings where I was just sleeping in, and I was just kind of working through that. So yeah, I ended up coming through a lot of that with just a much better relationship with myself. And I've done a lot of upgrading of, you know, things just like how I talk to myself, how I think about myself, how I treat myself. And it's maybe kind of like what you were talking about as far as, you know, the having that foundation, right? This was kind of part of my like emotional and mental foundation that was really weak, and I hadn't realized it. So all these plans I had, I was trying to build on this like very crumbly foundation, and I hadn't realized how impaired I was by that. So taking the time to just do that kind of work has been very fruitful. And now that I'm starting to get back into things like reading again, and I'm doing a lot more guitar these days, like it kind of almost feels like I'm coming back to myself, but again, it's different. Like it's me, but it's different. It's like me plus. So I feel like I'm in even a better place than I was, you know, 6 months ago, which 6 months ago, I thought I was in a pretty good place, but where I am now is, you know, that pales in comparison. So I'm glad I embraced that work. I think I really needed to do that, especially with some of the stuff I dealt with last year. As far as music stuff goes, so like I talked about my big three, so guitar, vocals, and songwriting. One of my goals was to work on my improvising on guitar, which I'm still doing, and I'm doing a lot of working on fretboard visualization. That's going well. I'm going to keep going with that. So I've been working through a visualization course. It's been super helpful. That is paired with this app called Solo. It's from Tom Quayle and David Beebe, and it's super great. It's amazing just how with a little bit of time each day, I'm just seeing the fretboard with so much more clarity. And I mean, I've been playing guitar for 23 years, and it's still amazing to me how much my relationship with the instrument can continue to deepen at this point. So that's been really fun. So that is still like going forward for the next 6 months is still priority one for guitar. And then just working on playing guitar more, like again, as my practicing in general of the guitar has really increased. Like it's felt really good to get back to that and to really like get my chops up again and just feel really connected to the instrument. So I think that's gonna keep being the focus. For vocals, I talked about I just wanted to do some more like maintaining, and I've been doing that. But also because I had that issue with my voice back in February, I'm doing some exercises as well that Courtney Swain very kindly showed me. Some vocal function exercises that are helping me sort of almost like it feels like I'm developing a different relationship with my voice. Like I'm learning how to sing with more ease, with less tension and effort. And that's been really helpful. So I've been doing these exercises like every day that I do my vocal practice Monday to Friday. That's like the first thing I do. I have like these stretches and then these exercises, and I do that before my usual vocal routine, and it's been super duper helpful just to have a bit more awareness of the kind of force with which I'm singing. And I'm trying to get better about doing that with my talking too, but sometimes I forget. So that has been really, really helpful. And I'm getting to a point with my voice where I feel like I'm ready to bump it up to the next level. But I'm not really sure how to go about that precisely. So I'm going to be doing some, digging and research and trying some new exercises and things like that. Like I have some voice teachers that I'm a big fan of, whose work I really respect. So that'll be where I go first to just kind of like start to dig to see like what can I get more into, especially as far as like vocal science. Like I'm really wanting to dig much deeper on the vocal science. I've done some study of it before, like over the years, especially as I got more into teaching, but like I feel like I really want to dig into that more. So that's kind of something that's on my mind. It's the kind of thing that I might not do this year. It might be more of like a 2025 thing, but it's on my mind. So at the very least, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. For the album specifically, I talked about having this goal of finishing the demos by the end of 2024. That was probably too lofty. I'm working on this album like almost every day, but because of just the amount of effort I'm putting into the production side of things, it takes a lot to build up even just a single song. I'm kind of like at this point taking a song and really working at improving it over the course of like a month and then getting feedback on it. So it's taking longer. So that also again is sort of part of what made me think maybe I need to have some weeks where that's most of what I'm working on, like where I just really push it forward, because I know I have more songs to write for it, but I haven't been doing as much writing. I've been doing more bulking up the songs that exist. So I'm not going to totally write off that as an option, but I think I'll have a better idea after the third quarter how things are going as to whether that's totally feasible. And maybe not having the demos totally done, but if I could have most of the songs written, I think that would be a huge win. So I just got to get into that RPM mentality a little bit. Speaking of which, I did RPM again this year. I keep forgetting that was a thing, but I wrote 4 new songs and I survived. And it was a rough one this year. I think part of that was because I was going through some stuff, but I still did it. So hooray for me.
Yay!
And I actually put up the songs on YouTube as well, which is not something I usually do. So that felt like a little bit of a push forward. Something else I talked about was wanting to do mixing lessons. I'm taking that off the table. I think that was, again, a little bit too lofty, thinking I'd be able to be in a position to do that by the second quarter. Just was not the case. I'm still working on mixing, of course, but I think I'm more interested in doing it within the context of just finishing little projects. Like I have some stuff I want to do, just little music things I want to release that are like very low stakes, low stakes things that if I can just do a bunch of those and finish those kinds of things, that'll be good enough practice for me at this point. It's still something I definitely want to do. Like I definitely want to get lessons, but especially because I know I'm not going to be mixing my debut album. I'm going to have somebody else do that for me. I feel like there's just not the same kind of pressure. Like I don't need to priority. Yeah, exactly. Like for me, I'm like way more interested in just getting my album finished than in like trying to get better at this skill that takes a long time to learn and all of that. So I want to keep up on it. And I am doing it in the context of working on my songs because I'm trying to make them sound as good as I can, but I'm not going to obsess about, being the best mixing engineer I can be, because that's not really, it's much more of a thing I'm interested in as part of supporting my songwriting and my production. So,
and I mean, that's its own specialty, right? So it's like, you could,
100%,
if you wanted to become an expert in that, that is a whole other thing that would involve a lot of other work. And so it's kind of, I run into the same issue, like maintaining focus on the things that are priorities, right? And like not getting sidetracked by all these other things that's like would be really cool to become super proficient at or whatever, but it's like ultimately it doesn't serve you, or it's distracting you from kind of the main priorities.
Yeah.
And like recognizing too, like there's things that we can outsource.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we don't have to do it all, and we don't have to know it all.
Yes, 100%. That has been such a relief for me, because I was very much like, I have to do everything myself. And part of that was just a little bit of arrogance, thinking like, I'm the only one who can do this well. But some of it was also just, I don't know, I think maybe my hesitance just to ask for help in general, just to feel like I need to do it all on my own. Yeah, I think part of it too is like, I know who I want to mix it to. It's like somebody I really trust, and I'm like, I know it's gonna be something great. So I think that's one thing too, is like when you are bringing in other people to work with you, like for me, like something as personal as this album, having people I trust is like so helpful, so important to make me feel like I can let go of some of that control, and that I don't have to be the one making every single decision or doing every single thing, especially if it means that the project is better, because somebody with way more experience can take care of the stuff that I'm just not as well versed in. And yeah, I talked about like my teaching. I'm at a sort of interesting place with my teaching right now, where I'm kind of not sure where I want it to fit. So I keep sort of flip-flopping on like what I want to do, because I still want to offer lessons, but I also want to offer coaching. But I'm just not sure what that's going to look like. So I'm in this weird, like really weird limbo right now, where I'm just not sure what that's going to look like. And so it's got me in this weird kind of funk almost, like aside from like just the teaching I'm doing, you know, one of the things I had talked about in the planning episode was, you know, wanting to get stuff set up in Notion, like systems and things like that. And I did a little bit of that, like as far as like getting on top of my task system, just to get stuff done for lessons. Like I'm much better about getting stuff done early and like staying on top of it and everything. So that's been really helpful. But I think I'm feeling really overwhelmed with all the ideas I have for teaching material and stuff. I think that's another part of it, is like knowing like, what do I do first? Yeah. But what I'm realizing is that I think a big part of what I want to do with teaching is deeply tied to all of this building a musical life stuff that I'm doing. So it's almost feels like they need to come together, but they're also kind of getting in each other's way, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I need to be working on all of the stuff I'm going to be putting out there, but also like I got to get the teaching stuff figured out. And it's just, they just feel almost a little bit at odds at the same time that I feel like they will work really well together when I get it figured out. So
it's probably the awkward transition stage.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause you're shifting target customers, target clients too, with the direction you're going with building a musical life. And so you're probably just feeling that kind of like, that's where that sort of tension might be coming in, is you're wanting to focus in a different area, but the business that you have now is in this area. And so it's like so it is that awkward, you have to keep one going while you kind of build that other one, because you can't just abandon income, right? Like it's...
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I also don't want to abandon the students that I have now.
Yeah.
Like the students I have now, I've had for years. And I also, I really like teaching them. So like I want to keep them for as long as they want to keep going. But there is definitely I want to use more, I want to structure more of my teaching around my ideas and my concepts and my processes. It's much more challenging to do that with existing students who are kind of used to a certain way of doing things. Like the way I teach is constantly shifting and evolving, because I'm always learning new things and trying new things. I think my students are probably used to that at this point, where it's like, I'm always like, okay, we're going to do something new. Like it's just kind of like, I'm very restless in how I do things, like for myself and then for my teaching, because I always want to do it better. I always feel like I can do it better. But I think structurally, like these things are so massive that I've introduced a little bit here and there, but I feel like it'd be easier to just bring in a new crew of students. That's kind of what I'm trying to do for this quarter, because I'm torn, like, because I really want to get this sort of new, evolved, more truthful version of what I can offer up, but I also want to be just getting in more teaching it. Like I want to be able to really put some of these ideas into practice. So I'm trying to pull in some more students just for the summer kind of thing. So I started advertising for like this summer lesson bundle. So, there's some flexibility there if people want to just, sign up for a few lessons, and then that's it. They don't have to continue if they don't want to. If it's less that same sort of level of commitment I typically expect when I sign students, where it's then they're signing up for weekly lessons. I'm trying to do something a little bit more flexible, just so I'm getting some new students in. I can start experimenting with some of these ideas that I have that are just not translating as well with existing students.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like, just to be bringing in income, because I obviously need that as well. And the summer is always a really, really rough, very scary time for music teachers. So, just trying to find a way to get all of that taken care of. So then that'll be something I sort of revisit at the end of September. Is this something I want to keep going? This sort of like lessons that are a little bit more targeted towards like beginner people or people who are less serious, while I'm still trying to like find my identity as a teacher and a coach as I'm putting stuff out there. So yeah, I'm in a weird career limbo right now.
It's not clean, which is I think you and I both don't like it when things aren't clean, and it's not cleanly categorized. And so like likely how this is going to roll out is you're going to have the students who you've always had, and you're going to be teaching them the same way you kind of have been, and then you'll gain students here and there that sign on for your kind of newer model of teaching. And that's probably how, like, ultimately that's how you're probably going to have to grow this thing. But it's annoying because like if you're anything like me, you want to abandon the old and just start fresh with the new. But like realistically speaking, I mean, you could do that, but then you need to pay for food. So like it's so it's not, sometimes these things, like these new ideas, it's not as like easy and clean as we want it to be to get it rolling. You'll figure it out though.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely have more clarity about the direction I'm going in, but it's still, it's that messy middle.
Yeah, it's the messy middle. That's right.
But speaking of all of my ideas and all of that, my building a musical life systems and processes and all of that, that is also a big thing. I want to get more of that out there. That's been one of those things. It's like, once I finally get my YouTube up, I'm gonna feel so much relief. I'm gonna feel waves of relief. I can just tell that I'm just going to feel so much better once I get that up there. Because this is one of those things, and again, I think part of that was just like the kind of headspace I've been in the last 6 months. It just kept getting pushed. But I'm at a point now, again, where I kind of just very recently got more clarity about what I want to do for like my spoken videos. So I have different kinds of videos I want to do, but for the ones where I'm just like talking about ideas, I'm like, oh, I know how I want to do them now. I know how I want to structure them. I got that figured out. So I gotta do it. So like my script is being written for my first one, but I also feel like I gotta get my blog back up too. I think that's something that's been bothering me too, is that I felt really great about having the blog going up weekly because I was putting something out there every week. And so you and I are doing that with the podcast, but it felt good for me having that thing that was for my stuff specifically, like where I was doing that every week. So I'm like, I'm going to get back into the blog. I started writing a blog post this week. I'm like, that's starting back up again. And it has to be where I'm doing it every week like I was before. So yeah, that's sort of like for the next 6 months, getting back into just having really regular output. So the blog, we've already got the podcast every couple of weeks, so that's good. And then getting YouTube up and running and getting that on some kind of a schedule. So I don't know if it's going to be every week. It depends on how long it takes me to do them. It might be every other week, but just having some kind of a schedule where it's like, this is just the thing I do. every week at this time or every other week at this time, just to like get the ball rolling there.
What's the purpose of the YouTube channel? Like, is that will that be is that sort of supplementary material to the teaching, or is that a something to try to bring students in? Like, what is your end goal with the YouTube?
It's both of those things, and also just a place where I can put out my ideas. Because I feel like the ideas I have and the experience I've had is something that could help a lot of musicians. I don't know how much detail I've gone into my backstory, musically speaking, but, you know, I really struggled for a lot of years in doing this thing that I love more than anything, but being really miserable. And it took me a lot of time to like find my way out of that to where I'm now very happy with what I'm doing. And so basically that's like all this Build a Musical Life stuff is just the name I've attached to the things I did to get me out. And I just found a way to make it so that it all makes sense, hopefully, to other people. Like, it's very like Cal Newport influenced in terms of how I'm thinking about structuring things and like making everything work into this like 3-part process and all of that. So it's going to be something that I hope like musicians will just be able to find and get use out of. And hopefully that can be a place where I'm building connections with people. And I think that's one thing too, is I feel like this longing to connect with my people. And I'm like, I can't find them where I'm at. Like, I have to be putting stuff out there. So it's just, you know, I've seen what YouTube has done for other musicians. I'm like, why not me? Why can't it be that thing for me as well? So it's definitely then something I can send my students to as well. So here's this idea I talked about today in the lesson. Like, I have a video on it. You know, it also just helps me to clarify my ideas, like the blogging, talking about it in the podcast. So YouTube will just be that next level of like giving me an opportunity to really help further clarify my ideas. Because eventually I want to write a book about this. So I need to be doing all this now to make sure it all works. And yeah, eventually I would like it to be maybe a place where people can then, you know, become interested in working with me in some capacity, whether they want to do lessons or coaching, or, you know, at some point I know I'm going to do courses and have resources and stuff like that. So definitely a place where people can just kind of learn who I am. And if they resonate with what I have to share, you know, they'll be able to have different ways to get value out of what I do.
Right.
And yeah, it kind of aligns with me feeling like I'm not, like I have this strong sense of what my purpose is. And, you know, I talk extensively about how music is my calling and how I feel like I'm not really living up to that. Like, I want more than anything to help musicians and share these ideas. And it's like, I'm just not doing that. And so I'm not living in integrity with myself because I'm not doing the thing I feel most called to do. So I think part of that too is like, it gives me, because video is so engaging, it's a much easier way for me to reach people than like doing the blog. You know, I do have like some readers. I do have some people who read my blog, but it's not the same. I think video would be much easier for me to reach people, for them to get to know me and get to know my story and maybe find some resonance in it. So yeah, it's my thinking there. And the other thing I had talked about in the video was just reading. And I talked about having this goal of reading 10 books per quarter, which I didn't quite make it. Again, I really slowed down once RPM hit. Right. But I've finished 14 over the last couple. Actually, 15 because of The Artist's Way. And I'm just about finished number 16. I don't think I'll finish it today, but yeah. So like, I feel like I could still be on course to read 40 for the whole year because I'm reading so much more again these days. Part of that is also just because I've now played Baldur's Gate 3 times through, and so it doesn't have the same hold on me that it did. That was taking up a lot of my time. Yeah, actually, how many? Let's see, everybody, how many hours I have. 362.3 hours on Baldur's Gate since December 26th. That's actually not that bad. Some people have like 1,000 hours at this point, so I think I'm looking okay.
Good old video games.
Yeah, anyways, so I do think I can get back on track as far as reading. But again, I'm, you know, it's not to me so much about the quantity, it is the quality. So I do want to continue getting better at reading and reading harder books. So I have to finish the Iliad and the Odyssey. I was reading like diligently every morning, and then again, RPM came and I just never got back into it. And I got off my morning routine. It wasn't as consistent. So that I know I'm going to get back into and all of that. So yeah, I think that's the end of my notes anyway. So I think that's all I had to say as far as that stuff goes. Anyways, I've been talking too much anyways, so it's probably best for me to leave it there.
Well, it sounds like you accomplished a lot.
Maybe. I guess, yeah, it's not, I haven't necessarily accomplished everything I wanted to, but things are moving forward. And again, I do want to acknowledge that all the internal work I did over the last 6 months has been like very profound. And I don't want to diminish that because it was really hard, but
yeah,
has been really beneficial. So, and I'm sort of like prepping to do another round of that kind of, because why not? As I'm working through a book called The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. So I'm only like a chapter in and I'm like, oh, this is going to go deep. But I just want to live in alignment with who I feel like I'm supposed to be. So I got to keep going deep. Any exciting plans for the next couple of weeks?
No.
But I mean, it's July, so that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to run out of things to say on this podcast, I realized, because it's like I've just kind of stopped doing things. So yeah, no exciting plans. Gardening probably, because the garden is nice. Full of weeds, and sleeping, and yeah.
Well, that's a good time. That stuff is important.
Yeah. What do you got going on?
Well, I have a song for my album that I'm getting ready to share for feedback in the next week or two.
Ooh,
so that's a priority. And yeah, beyond that, I'm going to be getting back into my blog. So I don't know that I'll have one ready because my release date is every Monday, or it's supposed to be every Monday. But I don't think, like this is June 30th. I don't think I'll have one ready for tomorrow, but probably the week after. So whatever that is, July the 8th. And then from that point, I'm going to stick. So this is my asking for accountability. I'm going to be committing to releasing a blog every Monday again.
Just get AI to write it.
Again, I was trying to think of like some kind of quick response. No. And I'm like, I got nothing. I'm
that noise was perfect.
All this talk about how like writing helps me to think, but I'm gonna get AI to do it, so I don't have to think anymore. I'm so tired of thinking. That's a lie. I love thinking. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
No,
I think everybody listening to this, I think you can all rest assured that anything you see written by me will be indeed written by me.
Written. Yeah.
When I was at the writing.
When I was at the art show, it was a bit disturbing because I saw one of the guys there had a little sign on his booth saying, "This isn't AI generated art." And I'm like, it's sad to me that we're now having to make that declaration to people.
Yeah.
Like, and we're going to have to start doing that in our written content too. Like, not written by AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw this, it was a quote from somebody talking about how, AI is doing my art and now I have more time to like do the dishes, but like AI should be doing my dishes so I have more time to like make art. Like that's really, people are getting it wrong when they're like, we should get AI to produce all this content and stuff. It's like, no, like let's make the AI do all of our housework so we don't have to do that nonsense anymore. And then we have more time to like do the stuff that is actually vital to us.
Yeah. AI is doing all of our artwork so that we can continue to stream videos from TikTok and work in office jobs and basically like doing all the things that give life joy. Let's give that to machines. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has its uses. Like I've used it a couple times with like, just like when I need to like draft an email to someone, I'm really struggling with the way to word it, and it's like, it's had its uses, but the uses are limited for sure for me. And I've seen like blog posts that are very clearly written by AI, and it's like it doesn't feel like there's anything of substance here because it's all just sort of pulling from all sorts of different places. So it ultimately writes like the most generic sounding thing. Yeah. So I'm not a huge fan, but
I wonder if it would be worth it for us to do an episode about AI at some point. Just, I don't know enough about AI to really have like a well-informed opinion about it. But I have opinions about, you know, the idea of like getting a robot to make your music or your art for you, which is like, to me, that defeats the purpose of making it, having the experience of making something. Like, that's the thing that matters. You know, I think it's this mistake to think that what matters is the end product. It's like, no, it's the process. The product is fun. Like, I love having songs, and I cannot wait to have an album I get to share with people that people can listen to. But those songs, once they're written, they're written. If I want that experience again, I have to do another. That's the fun of it. That's the fun, people. Don't let AI take that away from you.
And there's something nice about consuming something that's been written or created by a human as well.
100%.
There's a different quality there. You feel like there's like this sense of connection or something, right? Like I have a lot of opinions on AI. I mean, I don't like that. I really resent the fact that AI has learned off of stolen work, right? Like,
yes, 100%.
You know, like the artists that AI has learned from, they never consented. My knowledge is also very limited as well, and I'm ignorant in many ways, so I might be getting things wrong. But I find that kind of aggravating. It's like artists already struggle to make a living and be taken seriously and all of that stuff, and then it's just like this socially accepted like mass theft that everyone's like not only accepted but they're like jumping on board with, and it feels like a bit of a slap in the face.
Do we want to talk about this next time? I'm actually now very interested in going and doing a little research and like coming up with
that would involve me doing research.
Well, we can put a pin in it and
let's
save
shelve
it for
it.
a time when you're
let's shelve it, because what ends up happening with me is I get really passionate and I like voice all these opinions, but then it's like I don't actually do much research. So it's like, even what I just said, I'm like, I don't know how accurate any of that is. It's just how I feel.
I've heard that stuff though, like about the, you know, artists being upset. Like I see this with voice actors, like being so rightfully upset that they're like, no, you don't have permission to train AI with my voice. Like I spent years, you know, because somebody like a voice actor, they're actors. They have to train as actors, and then they use their voices, you know, in different scenarios. And it's like, yeah, that's special. I don't want to hear a robot voicing my video game characters. I like people doing it.
It's also like, that's a huge threat to, like, AI is a huge threat to voice actors for sure, because it'd be very easy to just get AI to do that stuff. I was talking to a friend, and he's putting together like a little pitch for an animated series, and he used AI to kind of generate like the animations and stuff. And it is like, he was like, oh, it's great for me because I saved so much money I didn't have to hire an animator. I was able to use this technology. So it's like, you know, you're starting to see how that was an animator who lost out on potential income, a potential contract. But then on the other hand, this is a thing that he wouldn't have been able to, you know, it would have taken him a lot longer to save up the money he needed to hire the people that he needed in order to support this project. And he was, so it's like this weird, like, some people win, some people lose.
Yeah.
And it in some ways it evens the playing field, and in some ways it doesn't. So it's a very interesting topic, but I feel a little too like heated about it to have like a civilized conversation.
Okay, yeah, we'll put it on the shelf, and then we can decide whether we want to visit that at some point. It's not something I had planned on, but just because we're going there with it. And I do have opinions, but yeah, I definitely need to be better informed. It's not something I use in any of my own work, so I'm definitely ignorant as to, you know, even the advantages of it. But anyways, yeah. I mean, other than that, that's kind of like for the next couple weeks, I think that's really my priority. Blog writing, getting this song ready to share for feedback, and then my usual stuff, my practicing, getting stuff figured out for YouTube and all of that.
Yeah.
And hopefully doing the recording for that soon. Definitely this quarter. Like it's got to get done. So that's really going to be my priority.
Woohoo.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you everyone for listening. You can send us questions and comments to streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram. We are at streamofartpodcast. You can join our Discord. The link is in the show notes. And there's links to both of our Instagrams as well, though we're not really active on Instagram. So, keep that in mind. We may or may not be at different points in the future. It kind of depends on how we're feeling. But Discord is definitely a place you can go, although we're not particularly active there either. So keep kind of forgetting it exists. I think that's maybe something, too, is something I need to put on one of my quarterly plans is like to get my act together as far as stuff for the podcast, like stuff beyond just doing the podcast, like stuff around it to just, create that community I keep talking about wanting to build. Apparently it takes work to do that, so I just gotta do the work to do that. But anyways, I digress. Thank you, everyone, again. And, your phone again?
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
We will see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.